intentional infliction of emotional distress.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sorry, I got to play a clip here. Hold on.
Emotional damage.
Typically, you do not see that in a corporate lawsuit. Like, it's not. It's something that jumps out to me as really freaking odd. Hey everyone, today we're getting into the kind of strike back by the ashes of creation. Former CEO, former head of Ashes of Creation, Steven Sharif, and some other legal filings related to this disaster. And as part of this, we are joined by Nefas QS. Welcome to the show, Nefas. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
Great.
Pleasure. And everyone's here is glad to have you. And let me get some messages here while we start. Exo Smiling, welcome as a new member. And then Yokai Watch Bracelets said away because exams now relax with a live. Yeah, this should be pretty relaxing. This should be very chill stream. So Nefas, I'm going to pull up your channel right here, but you want to get into, because I learned about this from my chat and from people that are fans of your channel and other channels that have been covering this that said, hey, can you talk about this? And once I looked at it, the rabbit hole is so deep. But I want to know, how you got into it initially and how you got so deep on this issue.
So just like most people, I was a buyer into the game, the idea of the game. So I spent personally $250 back in 2022 to get into the alpha phase of the game. And then, of course, when the whole thing imploded in the span of less than 5 minutes on a random Saturday night, right before the month of February, I was scrambling around like everybody else. I had no idea what was going. I had been invited to the Intrepid Studios creator program, but there was this deafening silence. We just knew that there were employee layoffs. We just knew that there were some random things happening that no one expected. Even the employees didn't know, seemingly, what was going on. So just like everybody else, I was covering it. I was like, okay, let's make a few videos about what we know so far. We found public records that had surfaced about a year ago that had kind of been swept under the rug by, I suppose, the hype train of the product. So many people were excited for the product that they were willing to overlook what people were bringing up to the public, in the public space. So we found out about the liens on the company name. We found out about his brother selling Ashes Creation merchandise, which we'll get into later, because there's an interesting story behind that as well. So I was covering it, and then, I started reaching out to people. I'm reaching out to employees. I'm also reaching out to the volunteer moderators, trying to get their stories. And then suddenly I get this random email. I think it was 2.5 weeks ago, from somebody who claims to have been an investor. And it's from a public court filing with Yaya Legacy Trust. This guy claimed to be Jason Karamanis. And I was like, okay, well, there's a bunch of people claiming to be everybody. I've asked for people to verify. Usually they don't get back to me with an answer. But this guy did. So we had a phone call, we had video calls. He showed me a lot of documents. He let me process 383 pages of text messages, not all of which are in the videos because most of it's not even relevant to Ashes Creation. This guy, I verified a few other things like his background and everything, his identity. And he does not have I think one green flag for me was he does not have the technical aptitude. No offense to him to like fake text messages or Photoshop.
Sure.
He doesn't know what Discord is. So I was like, okay, let's
you got the boomer. Okay, legit boomer. Got it. Yeah.
Right. So let's say deeper into this. And then what I found was more than likely, like 99%, and I always say allegedly, right, just in case.
Allegedly, yes.
Right, alleged. All this information that was never public. So we broke the news. Things blew up. Everyone started catching on to the video. And then that's when employees started reaching out to me. And I think we'll talk about that video here pretty soon.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting because the video you did here, which I recommend everybody goes over to his channel and watches. I'll pull this one up right now for you guys. Is this video, the Ashes of Creation was never going to come out. I found this one absolutely fascinating because he goes through and interviews all these employees and he numbers them. There's employee A, B, C, D, H, right? And they all seem to have, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but they seem to have different impressions of Steven.
Correct.
Right now, some of them they said, hey, he was a nice guy, he was friendly with us, and he played Magic the Gathering with us, and we had potluck with him, right? But when you get comments or different ones about talking about what he was doing with the game, you get stuff like here with Employee H, which I like this right here. We were forced into doing constant scope changes, grandiose pot fuel ideas dreamed up by Steven, dealing with his never-ending dog and pony shows we called the live stream.
Yeah.
Right.
And this guy actually gave positive testimony about Steven's character, by the way, right?
Right, but so, that's a positive character, right? Positive character, but
not
from
as
a business perspective, saying, Battle Royale was an epic waste of time and money and took advantage of investors who were completely clueless to game development, right? From a business standpoint, that just tells me everything I need to know. That for a long period of time, the resources were being mismanaged, right?
Yeah. I do want to clarify a couple things with the employee's testimony. So,
sure.
Because a lot of people are saying, oh, these are all contradicting each other, or some of it's contradicting each other. These are from a wide, employees that had occupied a wide variety of positions, from bottom to top at different periods of time. So you're going to have, I think, this is the most honest you can get, I feel like, from a person's perspective of what was going on, what Steven was like. And just as a clarification for your audience, I'm not a journalist. I'm not a professional journalist. Do I have a journalism background back from 2011 or 2012? Sure. But my expertise is more in biotech and history. So when I say things like in this video, things like journalists don't say, like, hey, they said more things off the record. I'm trying to give people a hint that, hey, this is not everything that was told to me or during it or after it. So I just want to get that out. Yeah.
Right. So it's not all the information, right? Because the employees, like you said, they're in different roles.
Correct.
And in certain roles, you might not normally run into the heads, or you might normally not go to a board meeting, even if they had them, which were, the allegations here. And what looks to me like is that the board really wasn't controlling the company for a long time until about the end of the company, right? So until about November, December, when it was when it was getting towards the end, the board was asserting more control. Maybe throughout 2025, they were slowly doing that, right? But it was more manifest towards the end. When I saw this comment, for example, here, and this just blows my mind, it was strange. I never saw the directors, no formal presentations or demos, right? So it's like that's something in a company where if you're working in a company, everybody is very aware of board meetings. Whenever I worked in multiple companies, there would be this drive right before the board meeting to justify our existence, and we'd have to come up with all these slides to show all the work we've done and what we've been hitting our goals, etc. And to never do that or hear about that or interact with them in that way is really abnormal for a company. So that's just something that jumped right out to me as bad.
Yeah.
So you've not had any, so from Steven, right? You've never had any personal interaction with him, or he's never tried to contact you or anything like that?
Not before this, but he did recently come by one of our live stream chats and probably spoke the most he's ever spoken since this whole thing. He said things along like, hey, I can't wait for Discovery. I'm glad Jason's calling you on stream and spilling his guts. He seems very confident in his case.
Countersuit.
Yes, counter lawsuit that you'll also be talking about here shortly, I believe. And
but even though Jason Kramus is not necessarily a party to that,
he is vaguely mentioned, only in terms,
in terms of TFE, maybe his relation to TFE, right? Because he has an interest in TFE. But just so you guys know, this is what we're gonna kind of be getting into here in a second. This is the lawsuit, the counter lawsuit that Steven Sharif has now filed in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California, himself personally, right, as an individual, and derivatively on behalf of Intrepid, which it's questionable his right to do that, but okay. And then against Robert Dawson, Ryan Ogden, Teresa Fett, Aaron Bartles. These are all board members, I believe. And then TFE Games Holdings, which obviously is the company that foreclosed on Intrepid and now owns the assets and all the IP. So this is very interesting because, we have parallel to this, we have lawsuits that are going on in Nevada,
Correct.
right? And this is the one that to me, maybe we can talk about briefly first. Oh wait, sorry. Let me get this one over here. We've got the Nevada lawsuit, which is TFE in Clark County, so that's Las Vegas, against Steven Sharif and John Moore. So in this lawsuit, they're pretty much going after them personally. Steven Sharif and John Moore, once again, that's his husband, who was working, I believe, was it the CFO or the COO?
CFO.
CFO.
Yes.
Right. Which to me, I just, those roles of, okay, your husband is a CFO and money is missing.
Mhm.
Right. That to me just screams conflict. Right. And
Absolutely.
potential issue here. And especially when there's a lot of money that's unaccounted for. In your review of the accounting, now let's talk about that for a second.
Mhm.
Because you've looked at some of the accounting documents, correct?
Yes, basically most of it. I also brought in the professional accountant in to look at it, and there's a lot of red flags everywhere. If these accounting sheets are to be believed, yeah.
So in the source of the accounting, is that as part of the discovery in the initial lawsuits, or what was the source of the accounting document?
This was Jason again.
Jason
Yeah.
Kramus.
Yes. He's not
Okay.
part of this lawsuit, as you pointed out earlier.
It's a separate lawsuit.
Correct. He's going to be filing a separate lawsuit in Southern California as well. And this is going to be on top of all the other lawsuits for the Warren Act violations from the employees.
Right. So assuming that those documents are real and they're going to be entered into evidence, that would be very, very bad. And as part of those, I think going over that, some of the big red flags that I clocked were no personal investment from Steven, right?
Not that we know of.
Right. So and once again, that's a big thing that he was telling a lot of the employees. If you go to the employee interviews, he was repeatedly saying, I'm investing my personal money in this. I believe I liquidated my crypto statement about that.
Yep.
Right. So they can, hold those against them in their proceedings.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, and so let me just go real quick. This lawsuit against Steven. So this is the one that is in Nevada, right? And they're trying to go against him for a lot of things, but mainly breach of fiduciary duty. So, saying, hey, you had a fiduciary duty to the company. You had a duty as an officer to manage and control the books. You breached that by refusing to turn over company records, right? Despite the fact that Intrepid now owns this. You're now preventing us from paying on our employees or making required third-party payments. And, that's an issue here. So this is a big lawsuit against Steven personally. And I think this one came before this one came on the 11th. So this came right before he filed his counterclaim.
Yes.
So, I mean, looking at this, I mean, I would just say, he breached his fiduciary duties by authorizing and causing the payment of approximately $17,400,000 in unauthorized personal or excessive expenses from January 1st towards January 1st, 2016 to January 31st, 2026, the misappropriations. Not limited to excessive personal loans to certain shareholders with no documentation and no repayment, direct transfers to shareholders with no stated business purpose, direct transfers to miscellaneous accounts with no stated business purpose, and D, miscellaneous personal expenses charged to Intrepid's credit cards or defendant Sharif's personal credit card that was reimbursed by Intrepid. And then going into the commingling of personal accounts and QuickBooks and commingling between the Intrepid accounts. So with the documents you look through the accounting documents and such, I mean, do they more line up with the narrative that's being told in this Nevada lawsuit?
Yes, it looks to be that way from the documents that we got access to. There was a and this is public information at this point. So there
Right.
was a very suspicious, for example, $200,000 withdrawal to a personal checking account under John Moore after a $500,000 deposit by Jason into the Intrepid checking account. We also saw other transactions that may not even be business expenses at all. So, and according to several employees, they had to go to the CFO, John Moore, to try to get him to give up his credit card for like software purchases or company expenses. It's not, it seems like it's implied that it was his personal credit card. So it's like, why are you using your credit card to cover company expenses? That's kind of weird. You should probably have a credit card for the company, not just
Right.
yourself. So
Right.
how are you going to pay yourself back though? Right. That's the question there too.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have some small incidental expenses now and then on
Right.
a personal credit card that you might accidentally use, but a routine use of a personal credit card for reimbursement is an accounting red flag. I mean, and should not be done. So this goes into a lot. And let me just pull this back up again for a second. Upon information and belief, between 10 million to 20 million of the 130 million raised by Sharif for the development of Ashes of Creation was not used by defendant to develop AOC, but was instead used for personal expenses.
Yeah, the crazy thing about this
That's nuts.
range of 10 to 20 mil, that could go up because from what I know, they just got very recently the financial books and records. They never had access to it as a claim until this month. So they're still looking through it as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. That to me is absolutely crazy. And when they say, this is breach of fiduciary duty, this is a loss and misappropriation of corporate assets, I think that's an understatement, to be completely honest. And then they go into breach of contract, right? So he had shareholder loans of approximately $362,000. Just absolutely massive amounts. Another one for breach of contract for $6,600,000 against Moore. And then we've got unjust enrichment in total of unauthorized transfers for $4 million with no documentation. I mean, these are massive numbers.
Yes.
And let me go here. Here we go. Upon information belief, defendant Sharif caused Intrepid to take out a loan to purchase real property located in San Diego, California.
Yep.
I believe this is his personal property, right?
Correct. It was his mansion that he often live streamed from. So the mansion, or the interior of the mansion, was often in the background, which I think convinced a lot of people that
he's going to claim it.
This guy's very rich. So
he's going to claim it as a business expense because he streamed it. And he was able to stream from his living room.
Maybe.
No, that's not how it works. That's definitely something that's a red flag. So it's like he used Intrepid's investments as revenue to obtain a loan to purchase the mansion, and he sold the property for $8.5 million and did not repay Intrepid for the loan and retained the profits from the sale for himself. So this is the profits they want to try to disgorge there. Absolutely massive. Then another Sharif making transfers to Moore totaling almost $6 million, $5.9 million, with no documentation. And once again, just absolutely crazy amounts. Absolutely crazy amounts. Let's see what else we got here. Do you got injunctive claim for relief and delivery of company records? You've got conversion, which is essentially like theft. And you've got attorney's fees they're trying to go after as well. So this is a massive lawsuit in Nevada that's pending against Steven Sharif. So to me, I had heard about this one coming, and I was like, this guy is just absolutely done. So I was shocked when I saw there was a counterclaim.
Yes.
And what he's trying to pitch for his counterclaim. So we're going to read through this counterclaim. I want to read through at least the beginning section of this because I think it's kind of worth going over, like Steven trying to defend himself and whether or not you think that's legitimate. We'll
see.
So interrupt me at any time here. You want to
Sure.
jump in. So plaintiff Steven Sharif, an individual on behalf of himself and all the other shareholders in Intrepid Studios by his undersigned counsel, alleges against Intrepid Studios, which is now owned by TFE, Robert Dawson, Ryan Ogden, Teresa Fett, and Aaron Bettles, the board defendants, and TFE Game Holdings. This lawsuit seeks to stop Intrepid's rogue board of directors from intentionally destroying the company, including through layoffs of its nearly entire workforce, through manufacturer crises, and through bad faith foreclosures on secured loans. The board defendants intentionally sabotaged Intrepid to steal its assets, including its most valuable assets, its IP and trade secrets. The IP was developed under the leadership of plaintiff Steven Sharif, a shareholder in Intrepid, its visionary founder and creator of the MMORPG Ashes Creation. I will just say throwing in visionary there was a little bit of a
yeah, a lot of people have been pointing that out. Like, why are you describing yourself as visionary? It's something other people usually give to you.
It's a team effort there, and
right.
This was something that was being worked on by a lot of people, not just yourself. And once again, I kind of laughed at this because to me the narrative here is, okay, this is this rogue board of directors, but we're going to see a timeline that really only starts developing in 2025, the last year, really the effectively the last year. They ended in early 26, of the company, when the company's been around 9 years.
Right.
So saying your board hasn't been, is a board that suddenly is doing something, is probably doing something because you fucked up that much, right?
Yeah.
And maybe in the past they let you slide on it because they weren't paying attention to what you were doing. But there's a certain point at which the board, especially as investors, which is very, very common, that the board is made up of the stakeholders, the biggest stakeholders, the biggest investors, that they're going to step in and try to save their investment. Because as much as Steven can say, well, this is a game and it's about fun and magic, it's a company, right? And companies are about money, and products and deliverables, right?
What's interesting is this is very contrary to all the claims he has made throughout the years since 2017, that there's no outside investors, there's no board of directors. He said this on hundreds of live streams, hundreds of developer updates, hundreds of posts online, saying, hey, we're never going to be beholden to board of directors. So it was very shocking to a lot of people in the gaming world when suddenly there's a board of directors that has surfaced seemingly out of nowhere.
Right.
Yeah.
When it's never been a thing before.
Right.
Yeah. So let's see. Plaintiff has dedicated more than a decade to developing Ashes of Creation, including its world, lore, gameplay system, software architecture, and proprietary development tools. The gaming community has, and by the way, I'm going to see, the one thing I wanted to see in this is if at any point he claims to have given his own money, because this is a statement that he seemed to consistently make listening to your videos. The employees were under the impression that he was giving his own money.
Yes.
And I think the public was under that impression as well.
Correct. He made it seem it was unlimited budget as well, which is insane.
Right. There's no unlimited budget. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right. It may seem unlimited, but
Sure.
that's because the money's coming quick. And when the money comes quick, you get a little bit drunk on the possibilities. So let me continue with this. I'm tracking this document and seeing if anywhere in here he makes that claim. Because if he does not make that claim, then it's pretty much an admission that was bullshit, right? If he's not saying, hey, look, I've got this, because what he'd be doing there, if he said that, he'd have to back that up in discovery and he'd have to, make sure he's not making a false statement. But if he didn't do that, then he certainly wouldn't put that in there. But anyways, the gaming community has been anxiously anticipating the full release of Ashes of Creation for years. Defendants well understood that the success or failure of Ashes of Creation would be exceedingly public and personal to plaintiff. Okay, it's like personalizing it to his feelings.
Yes.
They also understood that its success would be exceedingly profitable. It's a business. The board defendants took steps to ensure that they alone profited from that success at the expense of plaintiff, derivative plaintiffs, and Intrepid as a company. Beginning in 2024, defendant Rob Dawson, Intrepid's principal lender, once again, he's a lender, so he has a stake. He has a stake here. Embarked on a campaign to extort control of Intrepid from plaintiff, and ultimately strip Intrepid of its assets, including its groundbreaking IP and trade secrets, for Dawson's own use and financial gain. Through repeated threats to withhold funding for payroll, to shut Intrepid down, to financially ruin plaintiff, and even physically harm plaintiff, Dawson and okay, I'm going to tell you a little secret here, Nefas.
Okay.
You can copy paste this. This is a common error with redactions. This is like the worst redaction ever. So I think it won't hurt anybody to say it's a secret agreement, right? Because I this won't violate anything. I can say it's a secret agreement that they want to keep secret.
Yes.
So there was a secret agreement. Okay. This is the same they did that with the Epstein files too. It's like you just copy paste and get it out of here. It's like
they're not actually redacting, they're just highlighting it.
Black bar, lazy black bar. Elected himself LLL redactors. Elected himself to the board and cherry-picked additional board members who would do his bidding. These board members are defendants Ryan Ogden, who is a duly appointed chief financial officer, Teresa Fett, and Aaron Bartles, who collectively are the board defendants. So to me, I'm going to stop here real quick. This is what you do on the board. If you control the board, you elect people on the board that are on your side. Like, I don't know what Sharif is like. Has he not ever worked with a fucking board before? Like, that's how a fucking board works. There are a bunch of people that are there by the majority people, and they're paid to do their bidding, right?
Right.
That's it. They're not necessarily always going to be working for the enjoyment of gamers.
Correct.
Right? They're working to make sure their investment pays off. Now, I would argue that if you're making a game, it is smart to please gamers. You know,
sure.
that usually tends to make money.
Right.
Right. But at a certain point, if you're in kind of this development hell where you've been going on forever, you have to eventually deliver a product. And there can come a time if you're dicking around for too long, to use a legal term, right, where there's like, all right, let's go, we need to make some money. And that's not unreasonable at all from a board perspective. So the board failed to fulfill their fiduciary duties to the company, and so they engineered and executed a plan to strip Intrepid of its assets and transfer those assets to a Dawson-controlled entity, TFE, of which they are likely also members, and to misappropriate and claim ownership over Intrepid's intellectual property, trade secrets, and other things. So once again, a entity acquiring a company, kind of as a the investor entities acquiring a company, that's not necessarily impermissible, right?
Okay.
That does happen very often. You can have an entity that maybe had a 3-2 split or let's say they had a board of 5 and the interests are like 60-40 between two entities, and one entity buys it out or takes the majority of the assets. Like that does happen, right? And there's legal ways to make that happen, and it isn't presumptively illegal. But there are things you can do as part of that might be illegal. But let's keep going. Deliberately starving Intrepid of cash to manufacture justification for a foreclosure. To me, it's like maybe they were deliberately starving them of cash because they knew he was misappropriating funds.
Right. And I'm kind of curious what your legal take on this would be. Like,
right.
I don't know about Californian laws. If it's,
and I'm not a California lawyer, to be clear.
Right.
I can do federal law and Florida law, but I know a little bit about, especially about corporate stuff. So,
but I wouldn't think refusing to keep investing in a company or product is necessarily crime in itself, which is what's being claimed here.
It's not, unless there's a specific, like, for example, if they had some sort of specific like loan disbursement schedule and they were supposed to disperse a loan on a certain schedule, and they didn't do that, that could be a problem. But they don't have an obligation, like you said, to continually and endlessly pour their money into a project.
Yeah. And I think the bigger claim with this one is when they say starving of cash, starving Intrepid of cash, they're saying they didn't want to pay the workers. That's the bigger claim, I think, that's being issued here, I think, by Steven. And I'm not sure if that's also in the illegal area.
The investors don't have to pay the workers. You should have managed your funds appropriately as a company so you can pay your workers, right? If you've gotten into a position, which is what I talked about, the WARN Act, where you're having to terminate employees because you don't have money and you're not giving notice under the WARN Act, you have not budgeted properly for your expenditures.
Mhm.
right? That's a budgeting problem, and you effed your budget, right? And you've
Right.
got no sort of rainy day fund or sort of um, overall operating funds to do that. That's on you because you mismanage your funds. Um, thank you, Jaffa Greg, for 5 New Zealand. So here's a few bot to put in the swear jar. Oh yeah, sorry, I gotta pay up in the swear jar today. The swear jar is getting pretty full here, guys. I can see you need a few satang dropped in there tonight, Kun Andrew. I know this is pretty spicy. And when it gets into corporate stuff, once again, I having worked in the corporate world, like I see this and it to me jumps out as okay, this is really odd behavior. And this is the behavior of companies that I saw that were going to be insolvent,
Mhm.
right? And we're dealing with insolvent companies. So if we're dealing with like a potential bankruptcy situation, right? So the board would not be liable for that, and they would only be actually liable if they had board meetings. No, I mean you might even argue that you could argue that the board might be held more in a breach if they had zero meetings ever, and they never tried to do this, right? And they never tried to redirect a ship. And obviously they're going to have their own perspective on this, right? So this is Steven's perspective. So the board is going to have their own perspective. So the board might, I don't want to this is speculation, right? This is total speculation. But from their perspective, they may say, okay, in 2025, we noticed he was mismanaging money. And therefore we decided to take a more active role as a board. And I think if I was on the other side making their case, that's what I would say. Bald Eagle for 10 says Sharif is trying to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to run with the money he stole and keep the IP so he can sell it off to another studio down the road. He's lucky the IRS hasn't come in yet. Oh, they will eventually. Eventually they will come.
Yeah, one of the bigger claims by the TFE people are that he reported the loans as revenue on his tax filings.
That's going to be some IRS.
Yeah,
issues.
that's going to be an IRS for sure.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue here. Attempting to divert revenues owned by Intrepid to accounts controlled by TFE and Dawson, attempting to execute a wrongful Article 9 foreclosure in favor of TFE's junior secured lien without notice to senior secured creditors. And this was all done with the goal of leaving unpaid debts and existing shareholders with Intrepid while continuing to develop or sell and profit from ashes of creation through a new TFE entity. Well, the foreclosure's already happened, so that's already been that's already
Right.
water under the bridge. So a judge already adjudicated that.
Mhm.
If they're trying to go back and reopen that, that would be very interesting. And to me, it's like, why wasn't that information produced originally, I guess?
Mhm.
And so that's an interesting question. So when plaintiff objected to the foreclosure and alerted a senior secured creditor to defendant's scheme, defendants realized their plan had been unraveled and they abruptly wrongfully terminated nearly Intrepid's entire workforce. So that's the WARN Act, right?
Mhm.
Now, from what I heard though, Nefas, the order of operation was Steven resigns and then the WARN Act goes out after?
Yeah, that's what Steven says.
That's what Steven says.
Correct. According to some employee testimony, he had apparently resigned on the 19th of January.
Okay.
But everybody else knew about it between the 28th and 30th of January.
And they got the notice from from what I saw, some sketchy email. That was from somebody that nobody knew.
Mm-hmm. It's actually you're probably familiar with the term nihil dicet, right? He says nothing. That's a legal term, I believe, in Latin that says you didn't respond. That's pretty weird. Nobody knows who it is still. Nobody knows who sent it, whether it was an employee or Steven or John or the board. Yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, sorry. And let me answer that question. Someone, Digital TO is asking, can the board call a board meeting? Yes, the board can call a board meeting, right? Yeah, so the board can call a board meeting. So you can say perhaps that they're culpable as well for not calling meetings, right? But once again, we need to get into well, why weren't they calling meetings? Was that because they're being privately reassured by Sharif? They were getting calls from him, and saying, "Oh, we don't need a board meeting, we don't need that," and being talked down or getting some sort of other like informal updates. So we don't know about that. At least we don't have solid information from discovery. Anyways, he goes on to say defendants' actions signified to the public a complete collapse of Intrepid, and they triggered severe and intense public scrutiny regarding the apparent failure of the game, treatment of the employees, and plaintiffs' perceived role in both. Defendants intentionally set up plaintiff as a scapegoat to face the backlash alone, including by intentionally filing a false corporate disclosure listing Sharif as the sole board member and plaintiff's husband, John Moore, as the chief financial officer. Even though Ogden was duly appointed financial officer and all the board members were. Oh, now this is a little bit interesting because, from my understanding, he was the financial officer. Maybe there was a point at which they removed him, and they filed the false disclosure after they removed him.
So I think there was a corporation filing in April 2025 where Ryan Ogden appeared as CFO, along with Steven Sharif as CEO. But then I think, was it December, I believe, 2025, John Moore, I guess, went back to being CFO instead of Ryan Ogden.
Okay.
Right. So we have those two documents.
It's possible they could have, either made a mistake. That is possible. They could have made a mistake there, or they could have flipped that role back. It could go either way. They did this for no other reason than to conceal the identities of the board of directors and insulate them from public fallout. Well, that's not. You don't always make your board of directors public. That's not a. Yeah. Let me just stop that. Since destroying Intrepid, defendants have been actively soliciting buyers for Ashes of Creation, inclusive of, except for, by the way, if you have mandatory filings where you have to mandatory filings, you have to disclose them, right?
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you necessarily need to put it on your website, for example, right? Since destroying Intrepid, defendants have been actively soliciting buyers for Ashes of Creation, inclusive of Intrepid's intellectual property and trade secrets, in an attempt to salvage their own financial exposure. They have also been publicly defaming plaintiff to the gaming community. Now, this is interesting because that's the thing that's been floating around a lot, and I've seen a lot of guys talking about defamation. What do you think about that? Because to me, and I'll take this away for a second to let you opine on this. But to me, reading court documents and reading and going over evidence and reviewing stuff, even if it's evidence that, it is submitted by one party, if you caveat that and you give the explanation, hey, this is submitted by Jason Karamis, he's an investor, right? To me, that's not defamatory because you've got what is being presented as the facts in front of you, right? And you're just presenting on the facts. But I want to know, because some people say Sharif is being defamed and people need to be careful.
Well, I guess if Jason's allegations are true, then it's not defamation, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
And he seems very confident. I mean, he's willing to be very public about it. He's an open book, as he says. So I don't think there would be a case of defamation if he's this confident before a lawsuit, even, to spill everything about what he knows about Steven. This is actually the first mention of Jason Karamis, which he's not named, weirdly enough, in this lawsuit from Steven. Yeah, but he's kind of vaguely referred to, like, oh, these guys are defaming me. Oh, this random guy introduced me to Rob Dawson. That's all. That's both Jason. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think there's a case for defamation here. But maybe there's, we're still missing. Yeah.
And I don't think Sharif is going to go around and sue a bunch of YouTube creators that he thinks are defaming him. I don't think that would do his public image any good. And
he could try, but I
he
don't
could
think
try.
I
don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, a lot of people have been worried for me, like, oh my God, what if he tries to sue you or, I don't know, slap back? I'm like, I don't care. Go for it.
Honestly, it would just probably make you more popular.
Sure.
Because you'd get sued once again. You're getting like a bad face suit from a game developer. And, the headline on that is, game developer tries to crush dissenting voice, right? Or just like reviewer here.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, you're doing it very methodically. You're doing it very professionally, and you're going over the facts of this.
Yeah.
So, you're an excellent source of information on this. And I think it's you try to do it in a neutral way.
Yeah. I've never been sued for making videos. I haven't even been sued by a game dev company that I didn't part on good terms with either. So,
yeah,
it's fine.
You're good. You're good. Ace and X for £5 says legal mindsets pretends to be a nice guy, but has a weapon and mass destruction on display behind him. Just as a reminder, Nudek's doing all good today. She's doing all right. She got a hat. She's doing all right. She's not gonna hurt anybody. Not today. All right. Let's get back here to the action. So saying defendant's conduct, so that's all the Dawson, all the members there, have harmed the company and Steven Sharif and poses a continuing and imminent and existential threat to the company. I think the company is already pretty cooked.
Yeah.
Through this action, plaintiff, both individually and on behalf of Intrepid, seeks damages based on defendant's efforts to sabotage Intrepid and its work as one of the most ambitious gaming projects ever developed. It's just like this just like flowery language, like one of the most ambitious ever developed. It's just so like self-aggrandizing. Plaintiff also seeks injunctive and equitable relief to remedy harm to Intrepid and derivative plaintiffs from defendants' continued efforts to irrevocably destroy the company in pursuit of their own greed. Sometimes greed is good, guys, and not necessarily illegal. Okay, so that was what we had there from the intro. And let me see if I can get any other little snippets of this that I think are very relevant. Steven is trying to capture that intellectual property. So if you go back here, and this is a further one in the general allegations, right? He puts himself, here, Steve. So Sharif founds Intrepid, fosters Intrepid's creation of IP and trade secrets, and obtains early financing. So he puts himself in this position, kind of painting himself as the IP owner in this narrative. Saying he's a lifelong gamer, and prior to founding Intrepid, I'm just laughing. I'm like, okay, this is irrelevant. Like, this is an irrelevant fact,
right?
And prior to founding Intrepid, he participated in the gaming market as an avid consumer, taking a particular interest in MMO and MMORPGs. After years of experience with MMOs and MMORPGs on the player side, he was inspired to create his own game that would upgrade the player experience beyond what was available on the market. His original idea was stemmed from tabletop RPG concept, also created by Sharif, entitled Ashes of Creation. In creating his new inventive MMORPG, he sought to create complex and dynamic virtual game universe based on popular fantasy and science fiction themes. To realize his vision for Ashes of Creation, he set out to build deep and intricate systems that would present players with a greater degree of circumstances and responses to their actions, and as well as provide a positive player-to-player interaction not achieved in any other previous MMORPGs. I mean, that was what he sold to everybody. I mean, you're a potential buyer. I mean, is that kind of one of the buying points? Is all of this was the first time ever?
Sure. I was more interested in the ideas rather than the person himself, honestly. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people actually gave me a lot of hate for this when I was talking to him the time he came a few days ago when he came by our live stream. Like, hey, Steven, why don't you talk about your side of the story? I would love to share your side of the story. I mean, you were a visionary to a lot of people because he did enrapture a lot of people. He had a massive following. He still has a massive following. There's thousands of people still defending him, even though more and more coming out. It's not casting him in a good light. So yeah, I mean, I think it'd be more than fair to say that his proposals or ideas for this IP captured a lot of people's attentions, including mine. Got
it. By the way, Physics Meerkat, welcome as a new member. Appreciate you joining. Okay, so the Passion Project gained traction and became MMORPG in most anticipated MMORPG in 2020, 2022. Public excitement about the development of the game was further fueled by his innovative development approach, in which he fostered open dialogue with Ashes of Creation's potential user base. I stopped. I'm like, is this really unique? I mean, people talk to their users. He's not the first person to develop a game by listening to players.
What's your opinion on the flowery language used in this lawsuit so far? It seems a little abnormal.
It's a little bit much for what he's going for, and it paints him into this. Once again, it kind of paints him into this kind of singular role for crafting this and making this happen. It doesn't mention a lot of the others that would need to be brought on to make this happen. Not to mention the initial funding, right? Without the Kickstarter funding, without that initial boost, he would never be able to secure separate loans. And to me, that's a massive thing. And also all the very experienced developers he brought on, because in your interviewing with employees, a lot of these people had a ton of experience, right?
Right.
So that's necessary to get things done. Not just, I've got this really cool idea, bro. Anyways, there were many concrete benefits to this novel. It's a little bit much, right? It's innovative development approach. Well, what is that? To just talk to the user base, right? Host live webinars. Okay, right? However, an abundance of player feedback contributed to an already iterative and lengthy process that is typical of MMORPG development. Prior to the early access in 2025, Ashes of Creation had been tested with players in 3 separate iterations. Following years of were you part of any of this? The testing?
I did the Alpha 2 testing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you think when you played the Alpha 2?
I thought it was very unfinished. There definitely need to wait. I also have a lot of friends who invested invested like thousands of dollars into this.
Sure.
Some of them were also like, this is not ready yet. But I mean, I can see where the idea is going. I can see where the train of logic's going with some of these systems. So that's cool.
It gave you hope?
I think it gave a lot of people hope, even though it was very unfinished, and people took a break from it actually and said, "Oh, I'll just test it later when they add more stuff or fix more stuff." So that was there
something that struck out to you as like the most cool feature that was going to come out, or one thing that kind of jumped out?
It felt like a lot of things all at once. So I don't think there was any particular thing that jumped out to me. Definitely the art jumped out for sure.
Art.
Yeah, the graphics, because they had made the switch from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5, which is the engine for a lot of games these days.
Following the iterative diligence, an early access version was released to the public in 2025, December, right? Through Steam, a popular gaming platform. Prior to the execution of Dawson and the board's illicit plan, Ashes of Creation boasted the highly unusual day 30 player retention rate of approximately 76%.
Okay.
So he's going through all this IP, these trade secrets that once again, he's framing this as stuff that, hey, I was the one to do all this. Audio and visual effects, models for characters, monsters, the environment, visual effects, text narrative, sound effects, animations, production assets, the confidential source code and technical implementation architecture, including server-side node logic, distributed event processing systems, dynamic resource allocation algorithms, balancing formulas, backend systems governing world persistence, territory control, and economic dependencies, design and implementation of server meshing technology and distributed networking systems, proprietary player versus player risk reward scaling algorithms, and conditional reward modification logic implemented with combat and flagging systems, implemented node system engine logic, developmental tools used in the game creation, an event tool used to create open world events, wars, and caravan systems, an implemented seasonal environmental system as built by the engine, implemented trade caravan systems, including economic balancing and resource distribution logic, class implementation logic and stat balancing systems, and compiled builds, development pipelines, and infrastructure configurations and production environments. So saying essentially that these trade secrets were a secret. And let's see, and they had NDAs. Let's see here, and I want to make sure I don't read all the absolutely necessary stuff. But he gets back into, once again, here's the language once again. Right. Intrepid was Sharif's passion project. He provided early funding to the company from his personal funds. So there it is. That's what I was looking for.
Right.
So now he's put this in a court document. So
yeah,
now I want to see Sharif, and if he contacted you or got this over to you or whatever, now I want to see him produce that discovery, because I want to see the funding that he put in there and showing for that, and where is that in the books?
Right.
And why is that not in the other version that Jason Karamis provided to you?
Mm-hmm.
So how much did he provide? What form was it? You know, did he put it in $1 bills that were in an unmarked
Right.
bag that nobody can track?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, though the wording is very open. I mean, what is early funding? Does that mean like you bought a website domain and you know what I mean, like for $5? Who knows?
Right. Yeah. He you know, he paid somebody to help with the graphics for the Kickstarter.
Sure.
Right. Thereafter, in 2017, the company raised approximately $3 million in its Kickstarter campaign, demonstrating the outset of commercial value of the IP and trade secret materials. And by the way, a lot of those materials that he's talking about weren't even developed by then. They were that at that point, it was conceptual.
Mm-hmm.
During the initial phase of the company, the board of directors consisted of Sharif, John Moore, and Thomas Alkazan. That's because they didn't have investors, right?
Right.
So that's why. And when you get investors who are putting a lot of money in, they demand to be on the board. Starting in 2017, they began debt financing, much of which Sharif and Moore personally guaranteed. Doesn't mean they personally donated, but that means they guaranteed the loan. So in a case of default, they're liable for the loan, which I think is what they're dealing with now.
Right.
In 2020, the company acquired $6 million loan from Commerce West Bank pursuant to Federal Reserve's Main Street lending program. The loan carried a maturity term of 5 years and was personally guaranteed by Moore and collateralized by all of the company's assets, including its IP, which includes its trade secrets. Well, that's on him for collateralizing it that way. A year later, in 2021, one of the company's existing lenders introduced Sharif and the company to claimed billionaire Robert. Is this guy not a real billionaire? Like, so now he's disputing his billionaire status? Okay.
I'm not sure where you got that from. Jason never claimed Robert Dawson was. Yeah, this is where he kind of mentions Jason. One of the existing lenders introduced Sharif to Rob Dawson.
So it's
to my knowledge, Jason never claimed Rob Dawson was a billionaire. So I'm not sure where this is coming from.
Yeah, I see that. I see that there.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me make sure everything's okay. Yep, we're all good on the back end. Awesome. All right. So Dawson continued extending debt to the company, continuously extended debt to the company from 21 to 2025. So this is where I think the what we're talking about before. Do you have an obligation to continually give money to the company? Well, no, he was probably giving that money on some sort of basis or based on some sort of promises, right?
Right.
So someone doesn't just give money infinitely, and that may have been an expectation after 4 years of getting money from this dude that he was going to continue to get just unlimited payouts from this guy. Dawson was originally cooperative and supportive of Sharif and his vision, and he held himself out as a confidant for Sharif. Dawson came up in the multi-level marketing space, and he was not a gamer, which is probably dangerous. And also the fact that he did MLMs, I mean, yeah, he's going to be about that money.
Right. A lot of involved parties are from MLMs, including Jason.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say. SacredAura 61 said, do you think Jason shot his lawyer in the foot with his interviews and reveals? What do you think? I didn't hear everything, obviously, that Jason Kram has told you, but I mean, if he's producing documents which are going to come out as part of trial, I don't think it necessarily would destroy his case, but I hope he spoke to his attorney before he disclosed a bunch of stuff to you.
I did advise him, hey,
you don't know.
Well, I don't know, but I did advise Jason, hey, make sure you're talking to your attorney about this, and I think he did at one point. I don't know if he shot his lawyer in the foot necessarily, but his lawyers, he said his lawyer's already preparing the lawsuit, and it's going to be apparently the biggest lawsuit that Jason's ever filed. So it's going to be interesting.
Nice. All right, I'll pay attention for that one. I'm waiting for those. So when it came clear the project was not going to turn as much profit as he'd hoped, his behavior towards Sharif changed dramatically. Well, it's like, okay, well, he was in this for the money. He wasn't a gamer. Yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
Like, he's an investor, dude. Unbound Valkyrie gifted 10 Legal Mindset memberships. Thank you so much. I get a sound effect on that. Yes. received a gift, please say thank you to Unbound Valkyrie 9489. Appreciate that. Appreciate all the support of the channel. What you guys do is very great. We're gonna have a members only stream coming up very soon, where I'll maybe just do some reaction content, or maybe we talk about anime, games, other stuff like that. So if you haven't become a member, consider it, and get those gifts. All right, Dawson's campaign of controlling coercion. In late 2022-2023, a major video game developer expressed interest in acquiring Intrepid for hundreds of millions of dollars. I wonder who that was.
Jason is claiming it was Riot Games, the company behind League of Legends, Valorant.
Very interesting. Dawson urged Sharif to reject the proposed deal, and there could be good reason for that, right? Mm-hmm. In favor of continuing to develop Intrepid from the ground up under his financing. Sharif heeded his advice, rejecting the acquisition bid, and the acquisition discussions ended in early 2023. The acquisition offer, however, was a turning point in Sharif and Dawson's relationship. Dawson saw the company had very real potential for extremely high returns, and Dawson began a ruthless campaign for control of the company in order to realize these returns as quickly as possible, without consideration for the quality of the game and the typical development timeline of MMORPGs. That to me jumps out. Okay, so the typical development timeline of an MMORPG, does it typically take 9 years to develop an MMORPG? I mean, is that normal or standard?
It can, depending on the scope of the project. Mm-hmm. It seems to be an average of anywhere between 6.5 to 9.5 years.
Okay, so it was on the back end. It was on the longer end of the development timeline. Mm-hmm. But certainly not unreasonable to deliver within 9 years. Okay, that's fair. Oh, that's fair. All right. So from early 2023 through 2024, Dawson repeatedly held Sharif and then board hostage by threatening to withhold financing for employee payroll or health insurance funding days before payroll deadlines to shut the company down through litigation and to cause Sharif financial ruin and physical harm. This is really this one.
I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, that's a bold claim. I want to see where he's like, I'm gonna take you out back behind the copy machine and I'm gonna rough you up, buddy. I'm gonna take you out with the Xerox, like whatever. And nobody has Xerox anymore.
Sure,
I'm a boomer, but it's like where like this is and he actually brings this up later where he claims all these physical ailments he's having and saying this is as a result of this. I think it might be a result of him realizing the castle is crumbling, and the house of cards is coming down. But the physical harm thing, you really need to back that up. And very, very interesting. And once again, unless there was some sort of a written agreement, which I would love to see, if there was an investing agreement where he agreed to put down certain amounts of money on a certain schedule, as an investor, if he's just dispersing these funds to you, on an ad hoc basis, he can withhold them for whatever reason he wants. He can just not, because he doesn't feel like it that month, right? Unless there was some contract that you're alleging he breaches, which I didn't see that claim in here that there was some sort of contract. So that to me is very interesting. Unless signed documents granting Dawson greater and greater amounts of equity and control. Well, that once again, an investor who's giving more and more to the company is going to want more and more control. That's how it works. In one example, Dawson demanded a warrant granting him 10% of the company for $10. Well, maybe that's factoring in past investments, right? So a lot of times, for example, there might be a situation where you've already contributed something. So I've done like property deeds where we deed property for $1, but that's because there's consideration of other work that's been done or something else has been transferred in lieu of that payment, right? Because there's been something that's been done before that. So it's not presumptively not okay. SacredAura gifted 61 gifted 20 legal mindset memberships. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the subs as well, Sacred. Appreciate the subs.
Sorry, I'll let you go. I cut you off there, Nefas.
No, you're okay.
So yeah, thank you for that. Please say thank you for you get that 20 gift memberships. Appreciate that, SacredAura. And I'm glad you guys are enjoying this. If you enjoy this, make sure to like the stream and follow Nefas on his YouTube channel. It is in the description. His channel's in the description, and it is in the pinned chat. So both places you can see that and go and follow his good work. CTV TAC 96 is your take on the substance of the allegation of treating loan and refi proceeds as business revenue to secure new roads, FINRA violations, wire fraud. It's possible, right? So it's possible. Once again, allegations, right? So I need to make sure that all those documents are factual, etc. But yes, if you are making intentionally false disclosures and you're trying to deceive other lenders, yes, there can be other consequences for that. And yes, some of those can be criminal. That's possible. Once again, I'm using the word possible, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Right? And I think as we see these things play out, we'll see who's telling the truth, right? Because we're going to get these documents that Karamis surrendered to you will be entered into evidence, I assume. Or Steven, and the alternative, Steven magically has the records and he magically pulls out these accounting books that make everything make sense. So I guess I have to hold that out as a possibility that Steven somehow has the records that he hasn't turned over or can somehow validate this. But we haven't seen that. And to me, in the corporate world, that would be pretty miraculous. If you have the records that show that you did nothing wrong and that nothing was misappropriated, you would just produce those immediately. Okay. In other instances, Dawson demanded zero-cost, non-dilutable equity options in his convertible debt notes. Sharif and the then board acquiesced to Dawson's demands because they believed Dawson would make good on his threats and that refusing would result in immediate catastrophe for employees in the company. Dawson also required Sharif to involve him in all discussions with the company counsel. Despite his outsider status, Steven falsely represented he was an agent of the company to retain company counsel. Now, this could get him in some trouble, but it depends on what was being discussed and what was going on there, right? Because there are certain discussions. I mean, just because you're talking with the company attorney doesn't mean everything is necessarily a top secret or a breach there. But if there were false representations made about his status, that there could be some issues there. As a direct result of his intentional and mounting pressure, plaintiffs suffered an extreme health crisis. Here it is, including hypertensive emergency and acute kidney failure, hospitalization, and vision loss from blood pressure complication. That's a lot, including macular edema. Plaintiffs suffered long-term impairment from the health issues he experienced during this period. Dawson was privy to his health issues at the time, and he was well aware of the long-term impacts he suffered. So he's throwing in here essentially, and I believe, let me pull this down and scroll here for a second, but I believe one of his claims is actually intentional infliction of emotion distress, which I was just absolutely shocked by that. Let me see. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. I mean, sorry, I got to play a clip here. Hold on.
Emotional damage.
Typically, you do not see that in a corporate lawsuit. Like, it's not. It's something that jumps out to me as really freaking odd. And he doesn't give specific. I mean, he gives the kind of a broad picture,
right?
But like, he doesn't give a specific basis. Like, on this day, this encounter was so physically, whatever it was, so this that it inflicted this on me. And with malice or with the intent to do that. Odd to see this. And this was one where I was like, this is a weird counterclaim. I'll read through this section just because this blows my mind. So the board defendants engaged in extreme and outrageous conduct directed at Sharif by directing defendant Ogden to file a false statement of information in order to shield the board defendants from any public fallout arising from their illicit foreclosure and subsequent illegal firing of all Intrepid employees, and instead to pin the blame wrongfully on plaintiff. Their premeditated plan to shield their identities from the public and let the plaintiff take the fall has ruined plaintiff's reputation in the community he has devoted his professional life to, destroyed his sense of safety and well-being, and has put him directly in the way of harm. So essentially saying by filing, and so filing a false, essentially board filing, the accusation, and this is the accusation, once again, not saying this is true, but saying the filing of a false statement was enough to inflict this severe emotional distress, including anxiety, fear, humiliation, loss of sleep, disturbance of daily functioning, and other symptoms of mental anguish. So very interesting. I'm just going to say this is a very interesting claim. I will say right now, unless he provides a hell of a lot of evidence, this thing is not going to fly. And I will say it's probably the 7th claim for relief, because he's probably throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. To be clear, and I'll just go through the claims for relief now, real quick, just because we're a little bit into the show, and I want to make sure we have some time to talk at the end. But the first claim here is the Trade Secrets Act. So that's saying, hey, you own trade secrets, and those were mishandled. And then you've got another misappropriation of trade secrets under California's Uniform Trade Secret Act. So a state claim related to the trade secrets. Then you've got violation of their commercial code, which appears to be by violating, proper notice to secured parties that had interests in the company, breach of fiduciary duty against the board.
A few moments later.
So very in there, especially if there were no board meetings for a while. And then aiding and abetting breach of fiduciary duty against the company TFE. 6 is corporate waste. So essentially saying they misappropriated funds and they were not acting in the best interest of the company. And then intentional infliction of emotional distress. That's 7. And then civil conspiracy. So saying they willfully conspired to directly or indirectly misappropriate or disclose their confidential and proprietary business information, trade secrets, and intellectual property.
What kind of evidence would you need to see for a successful infliction of emotional damage? For successful
intentional infliction of emotional damage, I would need to see something very specific by that with that filing was intended to have that impact physically, like an emotional, physical impact on Steven Sharif, right? Because it can be, emotional damages are allowed for intentional infliction of emotional stress. It doesn't have to be physical damage, right? But saying they did that specifically to get him, right? Not for some other purpose, right? Some other whether it's a impermissible or shady purpose, you've got to prove that that was intended to be inflicted on Steven, that they were filing that document to make Steven have a mental breakdown, essentially, to break him. And I think that's very difficult to prove. That a filing of a document and you've got to show essentially emails where they're like, hey, we're gonna really break Steven with this one. This one's gonna destroy his magical dreams or whatever else it is. Like, you'd really need a lot of text messages, emails, a lot of backup to show that the filing of a disclosure is intended to hurt somebody in that way, to an intentional degree, right? And this is not something that is secondary or residual. That's IIED, intentional infliction. So yeah, that's where they lose me there. That's where he loses me. Now, maybe once again, this is all speculation. So maybe there's text messages and emails out there where these people say some evil stuff. Who knows? That's what the court's for. Same with civil conspiracy, by the way. With civil conspiracy, you're going to need to show that these guys were plotting, and you're going to need to show the this last eighth claim for relief. You're going to need to show that these guys were intentionally trying to misappropriate funds. And the thing is, when people are trying to do that, typically they're pretty careful about doing. I mean, sometimes they're sloppy, but typically people don't put in emails and text messages, hey, let's misappropriate funds here, right?
Mhm.
So you've got to have some backup for that. Now you can do it through accounting, you can do it through, hey, they violated these laws. But here's the thing, corporations can relatively innocently break laws all the time, right? You can file a corporate filing and make a mistake, right? So you might put the wrong party on there. So maybe, for example, like they mentioned the CFO, right?
Right.
You might have made a decision at a board to change the CFO and not reflected that on your disclosure and made a mistake. Those things happen, right? And that isn't necessarily the end of the world, and that doesn't necessarily mean everybody goes to jail, right? There might be a fine, there might be something else, but doesn't necessarily mean everybody goes to jail right away. Okay, so let me skip down here so we can kind of get to talking a little bit about this. But what he's looking for ultimately is an order enjoining defendants, that's TFE, from accessing, using, or selling the company's trade secret materials. So he wants to lock down pretty much all the IP. Voidance of any corporate acts taken in violation of fiduciary duties or applicable law, including the wrongful foreclosure. So now he's trying to claw back the foreclosure of the company, which remember, the company's already been foreclosed on. Intrepid was already foreclosed on by TFE. So trying to claw that back is a huge thing.
Okay.
And voidance of any corporate act that might include his firing or resignation, right? Because he says he resigned, but we don't know whether that was a result of a board action.
Mhm.
So that might be, once again, trying to put himself back into the driver's seat. Compensatory damages, consequential damages, punitive damages, and an order requiring the company adopt and implement appropriate corporate governance, compliance, and oversight, including removal of the board of directors from the board of Intrepid. So stripping the board, okay. Enhance board level oversight mechanisms, revised policies governing risk management, changes to executive compensation, clawback, or incentive structures, board and committee reconstitution or independence measures, a constructive trust, disgorgement of profits, attorney's fees, costs, and expenses. Once again, he wants these things.
Mhm.
So he's suing them personally to claim these things, mind you. Costs of suit, pre-judgment, post-judgment interest, preliminary and permanent injunction prohibiting them from wrongful acts, including continuing misappropriation of trade secrets and engaging in similar misconduct. So he's trying to keep them from selling anything, which, there's from what little value is left, and any other relief the court deems just and proper. Filed February 15, 2026. So I'll stop our review there.
Okay.
So, I mean, overall, what did you think about the different kind of the presentation there and, the overall angle of the lawsuit?
I think the counter lawsuit definitely paints him as more of a victim and valiant defender of the IP for sure. I think there's an instance where he describes Robert Dawson standing over, or like being physically intimidating and forcing him to sign 30 to 40 pages of legal documents that he doesn't even know what he was signing. These are pretty insane allegations. I feel like,
yes,
and the claims that he kind of outlines in the lawsuit, like, I think it implies there's an implication where, okay, we're here, but how did we get here, right? Like, where did this board of directors come from? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, how did we get here? Like, he doesn't really mention all that. He just mentions, okay, these are the damages. This is what happened to me behind the scenes, allegedly, all that.
Yeah, he doesn't really go into the investors at all. Just generally how investors got involved and at what levels investors were involved. Because from what you understand, looking at the accounting, these are investors that were giving a lot of money.
Yes.
Right? And if you give a lot of money, you are warranted say in the company. That's very fucking reasonable. And I'll put some money in the swear jar for that one. Like it's very reasonable to want a seat on the board, or at least to understand the direction of the company. And if you see it going in the wrong way, to redirect the company in the right way. So, him getting mad about that, once again, it goes along with you interviewed the employees, and a lot of the employees, I'm going to use this word. I'm not going to put this word in their mouth,
Okay.
but they kind of describe him as a control freak.
Yeah, some of them do.
Some of them describe him as a control freak. And for somebody that is a control freak, a board that's trying to tell you what to do certainly is something that you wouldn't like.
Right. I think an interesting thing about those testimonies is that there doesn't seem to be any middle ground. Like, there's no one saying, oh, he was okay. There's people saying he's really great or really bad. So that I think was very interesting to me when I was listening to people talk and corresponding with them, for sure.
I think that's very telling too, because I think that kind of gives the two sides there, because obviously there's going to be people that could really defend him because they had a good personal reaction with him. And it seems like, by the way, there's one character that I noticed in all of this. One of the employees noted a personal friend of Sharif's that was hired.
A Mr. Tom.
Mr. Tom.
Which I think potentially might be the Tom Alkazan mentioned in Steven's counter lawsuit. Thomas Alkazan.
Yeah.
One of the initial shareholders.
Very interesting situation, because it was like this guy who's a personal friend. He ends up getting a lot of benefits that other people don't get, right? Including like remote work benefits. And he ends up compensated, from what you understand, at a level above everybody else. I believe, was it even, people were speculating twice of what other people were being paid, but
right.
It just seems like when he had that personal connection with people, he was doing more for them, right? Which would lead you to this picture when you go to Motive and you paint the picture of the company of, okay, well, he's doing a lot of this stuff for his husband here, right? And allowing him to misappropriate funds because he's doing stuff for his, the friends here. And, as you're closer to Sharif, you get more, benefits.
Right.
Yeah. Jaffa Greg says, maybe get mood eggs and earplugs, Mr. Potty Bell. Sorry, guys. When I go back into corporate malfeasance, I start cursing because it brings me back to my lawyer days at the law firm, when I would just get situations and I would just be like, what the is this? Because this is a situation where you don't get to a board that is threatening, or investors that are threatening to cut funding so you don't hit payroll, without there being more context there. And that's what I'd want to see as part of this lawsuit is, okay, well, how do we get to that point? Because that's not how it starts.
Right.
Like, not at all. Okay. So let's wrap up for today. But guys, I want you all to make sure you check out Nefas and his channel. And can you tell the guys about what some of the stuff you may have coming up and some of the stuff you may cover on your next videos?
I'm still in correspondence with the investor that reached out to me, Jason Karamanis, and he wants to give more documents and more text messages. But he also wants us to wait for his lawsuit as well and see what's in there. I think we'll see some interesting numbers come out on the accounting side that I've seen, and I'm just right. I personally, I'm trying to stay neutral still. I'm still trying to give Steven the benefit of the doubt because I have no idea what his side might be. The counter lawsuit definitely. I don't know. What's your opinion as a lawyer in comparison to the counter lawsuit?
I just think the counter lawsuit is really freaking weak, and I think that the lawsuits that you look at, even the one in Nevada, against Sharif, right? That one gives very specific details about instances, contracts, secured loans that are breached, right? So you're looking at, okay, this specific thing was breached. Here it is. You owe this money. Where's the money, right? This money was misallocated, right? Where is that, right?
Right.
Very, very specific, very laser focused. Sharif, more vague. Aside from talking about that one secret agreement that he blanks out and other, he's got one or two other specific instances, it's more of a vague picture of corporate malfeasance. Okay, maybe they filed the disclosure wrong, one disclosure wrong. Not that strong of a case. So
what is the ultimate goal he has, you think, if you were his lawyer?
Well, there's two different sides of this. There could be things that were that were done wrong.
Right.
In the end, procedurally, maybe because they were rushing or they were doing things wrong. So it's possible they made mistakes at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to avoid any sort of procedural mishaps or some sort of preliminary injunction, he could be trying to get a settlement.
Okay.
So it could be pushing with some sort of settlement agreement with them. It could also be, and once again, to try to clear his name and paint his picture, right? Because now we know we are in the world, and that's my world,
Mm-hmm.
of lawsuits that are being covered on the internet. And when you have lawsuits that are being covered on the internet by people like yourself as well, you're covering this as well, and you're doing a really good job from a broad basis. You get a counter narrative to whatever your image was before. So now he's got this negative image, right? And now, Asmongold's covered my video, and other people,
Mm-hmm.
big channels, have covered this. Sharif does not look good.
Yeah.
He's got his defenders, right? Like you said, but overall, he's not looking good to the broader audience. When I look at most of my comments there, it's not good, right? For Sharif. He's not a hero in this story.
Mm-hmm.
And he could be trying to come back and paint himself as that. And he could be trying to salvage his career.
Okay.
Because this could be, if he has any chance to do anything in this field in the future, he's got to try to have his version of reality put out there. So it could just be to get that, and then ultimately, okay, he gets a settlement or something. But if I were them, I wouldn't settle with him over this. I would take this to the paint.
Yeah.
So it's a Hail Mary, but he might still want to be this big gaming guy in the future. He may still have this vision that he could come back and create another game,
Mm-hmm.
and that Steven Sharif is not done with gaming.
Interesting.
And he could genuinely believe that.
Okay.
Because there are people that are at that point of delusional belief.
I see.
And he may have, like I said, there may be some proof as to, once again, it's all allegations, but there may be some real things they did wrong procedurally, because he points out procedural errors.
Right. The foreclosure, I think.
The foreclosure, notices, stuff like that. That stuff happens, especially if you're rushing, and especially if your corporate counsel is not have proper time to consult with outside counsel or funding, right? To consult with outside counsel, you can file a disclosure incorrectly. That can totally happen. So I can believe they might have done some things wrong. That's very possible, but that doesn't necessarily mean like the overall attitude of the board was inappropriate. And it certainly doesn't mean that being greedy and just being, that line of being greedy and caring about money is necessarily a bad thing from the board's perspective, because that is indeed part of their duty to care about the finances of the company. And if you see the finances of the company are going like this,
Mm-hmm.
it's your job to pull it up.
Right.
And at a certain point, it is your job to liquidate the assets. There is a certain point when the company gets to a certain point, you have to consider, is liquidating the assets in the best interest of the company.
Okay.
If it gets to a certain point, like when you're on a down, that's like, and if a company is near bankruptcy, sometimes bankruptcy is in the best interest of the company.
Okay. I guess my last question for you is, what do you think is going to happen with the employees legally? Because it seems because they still need their compensation and pay.
They've got to be paid out.
Right.
Now, who's going to pay them out is the question.
Mm.
Right. So out of what pocket that comes, because that would presumptively come from Intrepid, right? Which is now owned by TFE Holdings. So if TFE Holdings is able to, disgorge enough profits,
Mm-hmm.
you had a letter, we didn't pull it out, from Valve,
Right.
where they were trying to get money from Valve. But they sent that letter on the 31st. The game was pulled off of Steam on February 3rd. So they really didn't get any money off of that.
Right.
But if they're able to get enough money from Steven, perhaps, or whoever else, then maybe they can go and pay those employees. And they're gonna have to, somebody's gonna have to pay those employees, right? And now, could they get in a situation where they get shorthanded? It's possible, right? Depending on the overall state of the company and what they have and their assets, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I think TFE should come in a pocket for that if they've recovered enough.
Okay.
So, once again, that's an important thing, and California puts a pretty high standard for that as well,
Mm-hmm.
because this was a California company, I believe.
Yes.
So, they might get it, but the timing might take a while, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, they should get what they're paid for. Now, are they going to get these bonuses? I mean, they can argue for it because they had these bonuses here that they were saying that they were owed. I'm going to pull this up again for you guys. I didn't show you this, but Steven Sharif promised them. This is pretty crazy here. Promised them bonuses that were ridiculous. Look at this bonus, right? You're making 55 to 70K. You're going to get 135 to 175 launch bonus, right? Up to, if you're making like 175K to 190, you're getting up to almost $500,000 here. I mean, this is an insane bonus.
Yeah, it is.
That was promised.
There's a legal disclaimer, right?
Let me go a little disclaimer on the bottom. Yeah, watch this. Disclaimer: this is not an employment contract and does not alter your at-will status as an employee. Company reserves the right to amend the bonus pool program at any time. Any payouts as part of the bonus pool may be impacted by unforeseen circumstances. So, they'll try to claim, hey, that's something that, it was unforeseen that we were going to go down. No, you guys knew this was going to happen. And that was shown to you at a time in which you knew your finances were. On that note, Nefas, thank you so much, brother.
Thank you so much for having me and giving us your legal insight. Really appreciate it.